In the beginning, man believed flight to be the privilege of mythological gods. The gods of Crete, of Egypt, of Assyria, and of Greece. As man's capabilities developed, so developed his power to dream of his own ability to fly. Leonardo da Vinci, whose genius stands in marked contrast to the ideas of his contemporaries. If it were not for the dreams in his fertile mind and the dreams in the minds of generations that followed, there would have been no tomorrow. Throughout history, throughout the world, the achievement of sustained, controlled, and powered flight eluded man. The dream was there, but never fulfilled. Sir George Cayley, with his revolutionary wing designs, solved the problems of lift. Steam and clockwork planes followed in 1857. Mosaiski's 1884 steam plane almost succeeded. Then, in 1903, the Wright Brothers flew and created fresh dreams in the minds of the young. Since the last century, France has been the cradle of world aviation. Louis Blériot established France as a mecca for powered flight, but there were others. Gabriel Voisin, who in 1905 made the first manned flight in a box kite glider towed by a launch. His brother, Charles, achieved the first powered flight from French soil soon after. Henry Farman, first an Englishman, later a naturalized Frenchman, established the first internationally ratified world distance record, the 771-meter epic flight being made in a Voisin aircraft. The French pioneer pilot Hubert Latin made the first attempt to claim the Daily Mail £1,000 prize for the first crossing of the English Channel. He failed. Indicative of the cavalier approach to flying, he was found later on top of the wreckage, floating in the channel, smoking a cigarette. Although already injured himself following a near-fatal crash at Orléans, 6 days later, Blériot left from Berrac, near Calais. His crossing took a miraculous 32 minutes. Although in Great Britain his reception was monumental, in France he became nothing less than an icon, and has to this day remained so. France was now becoming a magnet for foreign aviators. Aviators like Samuel F. Cody, better known as Buffalo Bill, seen here at the first Paris Air Show of 1908. The Wright Brothers made several appearances. Another American pioneer, Glenn Curtiss, also came, setting an 80km/h speed record in an airplane of his own design. But there was a price. Marcel Lefebvre, pictured here, was the first victim. 3 weeks later, he would be dead after attempting a new altitude record. In 1910, Georges Chavez made the first successful crossing of the Alps in a Blériot monoplane, only to be killed in a crash landing at Domodossola, Italy. But the pioneering didn't stop. Louis Blériot continued to set speed records over the measured 10-kilometer courses. Henry Farman was to carry the first passengers in France. His prize, a crate of champagne. Later, Glenn Curtiss was to return and capture the altitude record of 3,100 kilometers, the elusive 10,000 feet. It was a time of great daring, not, as one might imagine, confined to men. Women also fought hard to make their own mark in aviation. Their contribution was crucial in the development of these early aircraft. As aviation became more sophisticated, aeroplanes became airliners. This is the world's first, with an individual door for each passenger. The pioneering spirit of the day brought the aviette, a conventional bicycle with winged attachments, and the champion cyclist Poulain together. The attempt was intended to render the motor car useless. It jumped into the air once, to a height of 2 meters. But real innovation was to be maintained by Gabriel Voisin, who built the world's first float plane in 1912. It flew from the River Seine, but was so underpowered that sustained flight was not possible. A more powerful version soon followed. In the same year, 1912, Monaco, now the second home of French aviation, was the scene of the very first seaplane flight. It was to be the leading edge of developments towards the crossing of the Mediterranean. Fly-by-wire was nothing new in Blériot's day. This failed system for taking off from ships was test piloted by Adolphe Pégoud. Pégoud was becoming a popular national figure, a status which soared as he made the world's first parachute jump from 300 meters out of an obviously expendable Blériot aircraft. Following the tragic Georges Chavez, another French aviator, Voisin, flew across the Alps and lived. Landing at Dassault to a rapturous reception. Adolphe Pégoud stole more headlines, creating the art of aerobatics. The crowds went wild as France dominated the skies. Marcel Dassault, then Marcel Bloch, would become the most conspicuous figure in French aviation in these years. One beautiful day, during recreation in the corridor of the school, I lifted my eyes to the sky and I saw Wilbur Wright and the Comte de Lambert pass over the Eiffel Tower for the first time. I had never seen an aircraft, but I understood that aviation was entering into my spirit and my heart. Bloch received his engineering diploma from the École d'électricité Breguet and immediately joined the École nationale supérieure de l'aéronautique. But 1914 arrived. Innocence was put to death, and aviation found its bitter reality. When the war came, my friend Henri Potez and I were appointed to assure the development of some sets of drawings and to coordinate the manufacture of the Caudron G3 reconnaissance aircraft, whose production was divided among 4 factories. I then designed a propeller for the G3, improving its performance immensely. It was baptized the Éclair. I knew the characteristics of all the aircraft constructed at that time. I followed them from the moment of their conception until the end of their development. I began a company with Henri Potez, and we offered the Army a fighter and a twin-seater reconnaissance aircraft. Eagerly accepted, by the war's end, 115 had been constructed. But as the war drew to a close, the production pace could not be kept up, and the industry hit a trough due to the market being flooded with cheap surplus aircraft. For 10 years, Bloch achieved success in real estate and construction, but as the dark decade of the 30s began, he once more returned to his dream. I embarked on a policy to re-equip the French Air Forces with modern material. I proposed the construction of a 3-engined all-metal postal craft, the MB-60. In 1931, I designed the MB-81 single-engined ambulance craft. It also had success in many different countries. By the mid-1930s, I was building large transport planes. The MB-160 4-engine transport flew for the first time in 1937. There were many derivatives, and ironically, it was the Germans who showed the most interest.
20 ans de paix ont permis à l'aviation de prendre une ampleur que ses premiers maîtres n'avaient pas soupçonnée. Les aérobus relient les capitales. Les océans sont journellement traversés d'un coup d'aile. Les records tombent après les records, car le progrès n'a pas de limite. La devise des hommes de l'air d'aujourd'hui est encore celle des pionniers de l'aviation. Toujours plus vite, toujours plus loin, toujours plus haut.
Once again, Europe found itself at war, and France was to bear the brunt of the Nazi war machine. Their defense was spirited but hopeless. The Bloch fighters were underpowered and were picked off by the German Heinkels and Messerschmitts with such ease that it bordered upon contempt. When asked what the high and low points of his life were, he would respond, "The greatest time of my life has been my marriage. The worst time, without doubt, was the time spent in Buchenwald concentration camp." Marcel Bloch, being Jewish, was placed under immediate house arrest when France was overrun in September 1940. 4 years later, he was sent to Buchenwald. Though very ill, he survived until the liberation in 1945, avoiding the gas chamber by literally hours. In the camp, he made friendships with several influential figures in French aviation, and with help, he launched the Farman, thus beginning again a new era in French aviation history. Bloch and his fellow survivors from the nucleus of the pre-war engineers believed their industry could be greater than before. Their dream was of a jet, but the Farman, a simple military transport and trainer, proved to be the breadwinner in the interim period. Marcel Bloch's brother, Paul, had been a general in the French resistance. His code name was Dassault, and Marcel, as a mark of respect for Paul, and as a counter to the still prevailing feelings of anti-Semitism in Europe, adopted the code name as his own, and the name Bloch ceased to exist. The first jet, the Ouragan, or Hurricane, was seen for the first time in 1949. Ironically, there was much German inspiration in its design, since some of the Nazi rocket technicians working with Dassault had been pinched from under the noses of the rest of the Allies during the chaos that followed the end of the war. In retrospect, the The Hurricane was of somewhat uninspired design when seen against later Dassault jets, but it was tough, simple, and was regarded by its pilots as an excellent aircraft to fly. With national confidence in Dassault, there now began a process of innovation and extrapolation, which became a Dassault philosophy. The Hurricane needed higher performance to match the rival F-86 and the Soviet MiG-15. The Mystère became a quantum leap from the Hurricane. Not dissimilar in shape, the wing was swept back 30 degrees and its thickness reduced. Flying for the first time in 1951, the new high-powered engines pushed the new design to the limit. The Mystère was so successful that they could still be seen flying with the Israeli Air Force and the Armée de l'Air as late as 1977. When the French Navy wanted a single-seater for their aircraft carriers, Demoisseau and Foch, Dassault gave them the Étendard, a phenomenal fighting machine which also broke the world speed record in 1958, flying at more than 1,000 kilometers an hour. But the Étendard, after distinguished service, came under stiff competition from another European fighter, the Jaguar. Completing trials in 1970, the Jaguar met with lukewarm reaction from test pilots, journalists, and naval experts alike. Dassault weren't slow to counter, after detecting a market ripe for exploitation. And the Super Étendard first flew in 1974. It had a more powerful engine, an American-based inertial navigation system, nose radar, and a weapons load increased from 900 to 4,500 kilograms. Which confirmed the aircraft's ability as the most highly developed taker of human life yet to have flown, was fought in the South Atlantic, disputing the sovereignty of the Falkland Islands. Twinned with the appalling destructive power of the Exocet anti-ship missile, it put into profound doubt the viability of the British Royal Navy. But Dassault's commitment to the protection of the oceans and coastlines is not limited to naval strike aircraft, and their naval power is augmented by the Atlantique, an anti-submarine long-range maritime patrol aircraft. Its design stretches back to a NATO directive of 1959, and 30 years later, it's still in service with the naval forces of France, the Netherlands, Italy, and Pakistan. The secondary capabilities of this aircraft are astonishing. Its uninspiring looks belie classic Dassault pedigree. Together with maritime intelligence, the versatility of the Atlantique includes mine-laying, strike aircraft control, bombing, long-range surveillance, and maritime environmental protection, along with traditional search and rescue. Marcel Dassault's dream of a powerful national air force to protect his country's liberty was, like so many dreams of other aviation pioneers across the world, turned black by the necessity of selling those same machines of freedom to the highest bidder, right or wrong. Along with the Mystère and the Étendard, another series of fighter aeroplanes had been developed, the most famous of which, the Mirage, had its roots also in the decade of the 50s. In all its variants, it would become the most renowned strike aircraft of the post-war period. The Mirage 3, with its revolutionary thin wing with leading edge swept at 60 degrees, first flew in 1956. Its large, low-pressure tires made it ideal for landing on rough, relatively unprepared airstrips. With its excellent weapons capability, combined with unprecedented performance, it was capable of interception at high altitudes, yet was equally efficient in a ground attack role. The formula rapidly turned out to be a huge success. On January the 30th, 1957, the Mirage exceeded Mach 1.5, and then for the first time in Europe, on October the 24th, 1958, a speed of Mach 2 was exceeded. The 3C followed, and with its main asset being versatility, it immediately became sought after by the air forces worldwide. There was nothing else on the market to compare with the new Mirage. In effect, it could be adapted, with few changes, to the roles of interception, tactical chase, bombing, and reconnaissance. But Marcel Dassault's obsession with the aesthetic qualities of his aircraft did, in some vital areas, result in lost sales. He insisted that bombs would ruin the perfect lines of his airplanes. So, primarily, they were not designed to carry any. But this was preceded in 1960 by an even more costly mistake. NATO had decided that a vertical short takeoff and landing aircraft would be needed as a tactical attack machine to replace the Fiat G91. Dassault, now under pressure from Rolls-Royce, who saw a possible market for as many as 10,000 lift engines, went ahead and built the Balzac. It was essentially a rebuilt Mirage 3. It had 4 RB-108 lift jets and a Bristol Siddeley Orpheus engine for propulsion. It proved a disaster, crashing on 2 occasions with the loss of both pilots. After this failure came a larger, and it was hoped, more definitive combat machine. It reached Mach 2.4, but the whole program was terminated by the end of 1966, after the loss of the second aircraft. The one consolation from this large-scale failure was that Dassault was, at least, left with larger versions of the Mirage 3. Whilst experimentation with vertical takeoff was being pursued, Dassault had been experimenting with the TF-106 engine, derived from an original Pratt & Whitney design. Placed on a Mirage cell, it became the Mirage 3T, which flew for the first time in June 1964. It soon metamorphosized into the Mirage F2, a long-range 2-seater fighter which kept the fuselage of the 3, but by contrast, the Delta wing was abandoned for a swept wing. But other Mirage variants retained the Delta design, and this is where Dassault's policy of extrapolation is seen best. Nothing was wasted that could be used again. The Mirage 3 original design was again boosted with more power and became the 4, ordered not only by the French, but also by several foreign air forces. When asked why he built machines of war after his experiences in Buchenwald, he replied, "I did it for my country, for France, for her liberty." The civil aircraft market is traditionally more predictable than that of the military, and in 1955, Dassault began to look more closely at this market and made designs for the Mediterranean bizjet. But it wasn't until 1962 that a prototype was built in collaboration with Concorde builders Sud Aviation. now Aerospatiale. It was called the Mystère 20 and had a wing based on the fighter of the same name. Soon after its maiden flight, the legendary Charles Lindbergh visited the Bordeaux factory, flew the new plane, and immediately told Pan American that they had found the business jet that they were seeking. The incentive given by this most revered figure in world aviation spurred Dassault on to form the Falcon Jet Corporation in the USA, specifically to market the aircraft. £4,200 of thrust powered the Mystère 20, which went into production as the Falcon. By the beginning of the 80s, sales had topped 500, with over half sold by the Special Marketing Organization. The Falcon has also been produced to suit various different, often more humanitarian roles, with interiors equipped for coast guards, freight, photography, crew training, navigation, and radar calibration, and as very effective aerial ambulances. This typically multifaceted aircraft has given Marcel Dassault a sense of achievement independent of the quantum leaps achieved in European fighter technology. There are now several versions of the Falcon 20. The Series F is a high-lift version, whilst the Series G has the highly efficient Garrett Research fan engine. The Falcon 10, though smaller, is faster than the 20. In fact, it is one of the fastest of all executive aircraft, yet maintains the same long range, around 3,560 kilometers, as its larger brother. The Falcon 50 was rolled out, with the intention of flying coast to coast across America, or from America to mainland Europe. Even from the beginning of flight development, it exceeded expectations. And after a supercritical wing was fitted, its 3 turbofan engines powered the aircraft to Mach 0.83 at an impressive 30,000 feet. Not surprisingly, this jet will be developed, extended and refined well into the next century. Yet in another area of civil aviation, there has been failure for Dassault. The Mercure, a competent passenger airliner, was beaten by the Boeing Corporation's vast experience. It was another French-inspired project, the Airbus, that would carry the European flag forward to challenge American domination in this field. Bernard Ziegler of Airbus Industry.
Well, okay, somewhere by the 1950-60, it started to be absolutely clear that a kind of monopoly in civil aviation was developing in the United States. And it started to be obvious that the Europeans will not survive if they were not able to bring together their forces. The first good example was the Concorde. It was most probably a project slightly too ambitious, but it was a first example of what the European Design Office were able to produce if they were able to bring together their team. The next step was Airbus.
Slightly smaller than the DC-10 and TriStar, the Airbus is unusual when compared to other wide-bodied aircraft. The A300, twin-engined, powered by 2 General Electric turbofans, generates over 50,000 pounds of thrust. The seating capacity ranges from 251 in mixed class to, if necessary, 336 in the high-density 9 abreast layout. It is a thoroughly international product, with French, German, Dutch and Spanish partners, each working with government backing. In Great Britain, Hawker Siddeley designs and builds the wings, still the most advanced design in service, but built without government support. Airbus industry and its partners have led the way with many airliner firsts since 1974, when the A300 entered service.
Because there was no way to compete with Boeing if we were not able to offer something new to the customer. And this something new, obviously, is new technology. The first step was the wide-body twin, which is the first Airbus, which took off in 1972. And from that point, step by step, we have bring the digital technology in the aircraft, the two-crew cockpit. The first two-crew wide-body cockpit was an Airbus. We have also bring to the market new airfoil.
It was the first twin-aisle two-engined aircraft, the first to use a Category 3 automatic landing, revolutionary composite materials, fly-by-wire stat and flap controls. The list of firsts was looked upon with envy from across the Atlantic. Components for Airbus are transported around Europe by the Beluga, a modified A300-600 Airbus designed specifically to carry wing sections from England and to gather all the sections together for assembly at the original Aerospatiale plant in Toulouse, France. It was the first airliner, and remains unchallenged, to use carbon fiber in mass production of major elements, including the fin, and plans are afoot to make the tailplane in the same manner. Once constructed, the basic elements are flown back to Toulouse under their own power, where seats, trim, insulation, and interior fittings are installed. The epitome of Airbus high-tech leadership is the computer-driven fly-by-wire controls built into the A320, improving safety by giving pilots greater control of their aircraft without exceeding set limits. It protects against stalling, excess speed, and damage that would result by excessive stress during unreasonable maneuvers. The television-like displays reduce the number of separate instruments, creating a more efficient flight deck. The family continues to grow, and the 62 airlines who have bought the aircraft are a testament to its achievement. The future possibilities are boundless.
Just the fact that Airbus was there to offer this alternative have motivated those people also to improve their product. And I believe that it has been extremely good for everybody, not only for sure for Europe, which gives a reasonable chance for Europe to manufacture aircraft for the civil market, but also for the US industry, because it was, the competition is always good to improve the product, to better match the need of the market.
Fighter development seemed to mark time at Dassault during the mid-70s, but the Mirage 4000, and in particular the 2000, remedied the situation in the 80s. Mirage development continues apace. But now there is a new Dassault aircraft that seems destined to supersede all previous development. Its name, Rafale. This experimental aircraft first flew in July 1986, launching Dassault into an entirely new era of development. It was new in every respect. New engines, new electronics. But for Dassault, the company, it involved yet more risks if the play made by them and the French Air Force to remain at the highest level in a world market was to succeed. The first flight was accomplished only 27 months after work started, and by just its sixth flight, it attained a speed of Mach 1.8. When asked why so fast, Marcel replied, "Simply, we are used to this type of working, but it wasn't managed in one day. We've been working on combat aircraft for 40 years, and we've had the luck of building 91 prototypes. Rafale is the 92nd. And the result of concentrated know-how of design teams who simultaneously remained unchanged while being constantly renewed with fresh blood." Rafale is an incredibly self-contained arms system that maximizes the use of new technologies. The company, since 1931, had been led by the same man. But now, as the Rafale was unveiled, he died. Marcel Dassault was never to see the Rafale fly. The industrial success of Dassault, the company, is directly attributed to the innovative qualities of Dassault, the man. He had seen aviation through from the start, from the Wright Brothers, circling the Eiffel Tower, to Europe, and in particular France through the Ariane project, ascend to the heavens.
French government's demand for cost-cutting virtually stopped the Rafale production in 1995, with work finally halting the following April. Effectively relaunching the project, Dassault and the French Defense Ministry agreed on a 48 aircraft procurement in exchange for a 10% reduction in cost. The first 6, as naval versions, will be delivered in 2001. The Mirage 2000, produced in a multitude of variants and well proven both at home and abroad, earning a valuable share of the lucrative fighter market and ensuring a future for the company and its almost 10,000 employees. It has been a century of flight since these pioneers risked their lives to make flying possible for the ordinary person. These antics, which now, through the medium of film, look slightly absurd, gave us legends. Louis Blériot, the brothers Voisin, There was failure, even death, but the eventual conquest and domination of the skies was inevitable, unstoppable. No one man understood this more completely than Marcel Dassault, and no man worked harder to achieve his vision.